Welcome to the Remarkable Retail Podcast, the only podcast hosted by two of the NRF top retail voices for 2025 and 2026. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm Steve Dennis.
On this episode, live from New York in the Narvar Podcasting Studio on the NRF Big Show Trade Show floor, our first guest of many is Jessica Schinazi, the new CEO of Away Luggage. Jessica is an alum of LVMH, Dyson, and takes over the Star DNVB brand to take it forward into the state of affairs that is modern retail. First, though, we'll catch up on all the retail news that matters. And then after our conversation with Jessica, we'll talk about what we are finding remarkable this week and what we are keeping our eye on in this dynamic industry we call retail. Steve, I thought an amazing conversation with a veteran retail leader, and feeling blessed we had the opportunity to have the conversation in person.
Yeah, well, as our listeners would know, we do most of it, or might suspect, I guess they may not know it, but we do most of our interviews virtually. You're usually in Toronto, I'm usually in Dallas, and our guest is wherever. But yeah, it's really fun. It's a different dynamic. It's fun to be on the floor. People will hear the buzz going on. But the interview with Jessica is really, I mean, she's such a dynamic leader, amazing experience, and some of the things that are going on at Away, I think many people will find quite fascinating. And Away has managed to be kind of the OG, one of the OGs of DNVBs, because they are part of that kind of first wave. And as we've talked about many times, and we touch on a little bit with Jessica, a lot of them have either gone away or are gasping for air. But Away, thankfully, not so much. But anyway, we'll tease that, but people should stay tuned because it's a great conversation.
Now, speaking of luggage, I just unpacked mine. You just unpacked yours, but you're repacking your luggage for another big trip. Tell us about it.
Yes, on Saturday, I'm heading to Abu Dhabi for Shop Talk Luxe, the inaugural Shop Talk Luxe. And I have been not only trying to figure out what I'm going to wear, but and take with me, but also prepping for not one, not two, but three sessions. I'm really looking forward because I've had my prep call with her, my main stage conversation with Jennifer Wu, the CEO of Lane Crawford. And they are a very, very interesting retailer, really the dominant luxury retailer in Asia. We'll talk about a dominant North American luxury department store, which has got a little bit different story. But we'll be recording that conversation for the pod. At least that's the plan if the AV gods support us. And then I'll also be doing what's called the talk show format. So 3 quick interviews back to back on physical experiences that convert and connect with execs from Aesop, the CEO of Liberty of London, and the CEO of Shanghai Tang, another great Asian retailer, specialty retailer. And then very final session of the 3 days, I guess it is, the recap with Deb Weinswig, former guest on the pod, Ben Miller, former guest on the pod, and it should be a ton of fun, but a long, long journey.
Well, let's talk about, talking about content from a conference, we see lots of them on LinkedIn. Everybody's putting in their 2 cents worth about what they thought NRF was about or wasn't about, or, you know, the pictures are aplenty. What were your kind of takeaways? I mean, we spent a lot of time in our studio. Thank you, Narvar. So we didn't spend much time at all walking the show floor, but lots of time talking to people and great conversations. Any quick takeaways?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, congratulations to the NRF. Record crowd, 41,000. I think all of them were outside our booth at times when we were recording. That's true. But
move on.
And also, I would say the NRF has, not too surprisingly, used AI to do some summaries of all the content. So you can find that on the NRF website if you want to get a digest of some of the talks, and as well as all comings and goings at the show. But I mean, to no one's surprise, AI. So many of the sessions focused on that. Just walking around the show floor, I went into the Innovators Showcase to do a tour there. I mean, 70-80% of the booths were AI focused or emphasizing AI. I guess a couple of things I'll just say very quickly. There was a sense, and I can't personally validate this, but there was a sense that many companies are moving more from experimentation to more implementation and finding the more pragmatic applications of AI. One of the things I found kind of interesting and again, I'm not sure I understand this well enough to do much of a deep dive. There's definitely better people that can do that. But, there's been so much talk about the agentic commerce world, folks going to ChatGPT or other LLMs to do shopping. What I found interesting was both from some of the booths, but also from some of the commentary, what's really needed to enhance the value of that traffic, that sometimes the product databases and other technology around a website don't really use that inbound or can't leverage that inbound traffic as well in a helpful way. And so there are many companies, retailers talking about what they need to do to take advantage of that. And then there's definitely technology out there to try to supplement or enhance the technology to make that traffic more useful. So I think that's an interesting space to watch. But other than hanging out in the crowds and putting on a lot of getting my steps in at Javits Center, that's about what I got to say about that.
Well, I mean, one of the biggest opportunities I find about NRF is, I'm not a buyer. I'm not signing POs. I'm not looking for technology. Is the relationship element of the show. I mean, there's people that I only see at NRF. I've been going like you for literally decades, and there's just people I see there and new people I meet. I met lots of new people. It's a great opportunity, both fellow voices and Rethink Retail. Top retail experts. The place is lousy with them, so to speak, all over the place. Yes. So anyway, I really appreciate the trip there. Now let's get to other news. There's certain things that happened last week in the news that were forecasted, and we were just watching the minutes. Really, sitting at the show. Of course, I'm talking about the Saks Global file for bankruptcy. Let's get into it. A few details. You made some prognostications that turned out to be very, very accurate last episode. But what are your early thoughts in this? Probably a longer process.
Yeah, well, I'll comment on this twice, once in the news, and then we'll come back to it after the interview with a little more commentary. But I have to say, it's hard to overstate what a shit show this has been. I mean, the deal, anybody who's followed my writing or the podcast will know that this marriage seemed inevitable for years, but once the deal was struck, it seemed like it was in trouble almost immediately, and that bankruptcy filing was inevitable unless somehow or other they managed to sell the thing, which hasn't happened, at least not yet. I'm not going to go into too much detail, just kind of quick recap, but I did cover a fair amount of commentary in the last two of my Substack newsletter, Pardon the Disruption. So if folks are interested in that, I would go check that out. I get into what stores I think are going to close and some other things. But anyway, yes, as predicted.
And a reminder to listeners who may not know you as well. You have some firsthand experience, so to speak, being at Neiman Marcus. So you do have a particular expertise looking at not this deal, but at least the context.
Well, I do understand the sector pretty well. At least I think I do. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But I have looked at this the merger on a couple of different occasions, though not super recently. But anyway, one of the things we talked about was who would lead the new entity. So as predicted, Richard Baker was kicked out or shown the door, however you want to think about it. And Geoffroy Van Romendonk, who is previously the Neiman Marcus CEO, who left after the merger, is coming back. Which I think is a very good choice for a bunch of reasons. One is he knows maybe where the bodies are buried as well as the opportunities because he led Neiman Marcus for a number of years and worked on the deal. He also has a lot of great vendor relationships, and he did lead Neiman Marcus through their Chapter 11 bankruptcy during COVID. And it's pretty clear he's getting the band back together. Several Saks executives are leaving, several former Neiman Marcus Group execs coming back, Darcy Pennick, Lana Todorovich, Brandy Richardson, who I worked with at Neiman's many, many years ago, who actually joined Saks Global as the CFO, but she has spent most of her career at Neiman Marcus, and so she reported, I believe, to GVR, as he's affectionately known. So, as I said, I'll have a little bit more commentary after we listen to our interview with Jessica, but I would say probably a larger number of stores may be closing even than I thought last week. I was looking at some of the data on some of the stores. There's also one thing I didn't touch on last week or in the past, and I probably didn't get into as well as I should have in the newsletter. There is an opportunity to perhaps renegotiate some leases. Now, as we've talked about many times, many people would know, department stores in general, at least the old kind of anchor stores, don't pay a lot of rent. but there may be an opportunity to reduce the rent that they do pay. But there also might be some extensions of leases or taking them from a 20-year lease down to, say, a 3-year with options that would give them more time to figure out what to do, but allow them to get out if the business doesn't play out as the way they thought. So, how that will ultimately sort out in terms of the number of store closings get announced here in the next few months or whenever this reorganization plan gets done, is really TBD. But let me stop there. I'll have a few other thoughts, as I said, a little bit later.
All right, we'll come back to that. We are now January, end of January. We're just starting the earnings season. We're starting to get some breadcrumbs about what happened over holiday and 2025. Talk about your early observations on earnings seasons.
Well, for the most part, because of most retailers having a January ending calendar, we are getting mostly industrial companies, CPG companies, those kinds of things, which I think can provide maybe some clues to the economy's direction, because we'll get commentary about tariffs and inflation and hiring plans maybe. So those are just kind of coming in now. The retailer to really watch that's more in the near term will be Amazon. And I believe they're going to report on February 5th. So we got a couple weeks before that. We did get an earnings report from JCPenney. JCPenney is a private company, but they do release some financial information, but it's quite delayed. So this is not the holiday quarter. It's really the quarter behind that. And they delivered another poor quarter, though some people seem to see some optimism in it. I'm not going to name names, but you know who you are, and I think you're wrong. But anyway, they reported a 3.8% sales decrease. Now, that's less of a decline than they have been experiencing, which is why it gave some people optimism. But again, as I pointed out with some other retailers, when the categories that JCPenney is in are growing at 4, 5, 6%, this just means the gap continues to widen between them and the competition. It's just not widening quite as much. That to me is not signs of progress. And as I've mentioned many times, the more you shrink the customer base, the easier it is to have the sales decreases be less, because you're left with the people that like you the most. But the really troubling sign to me was that the losses, the financial performance, the net income, got that loss widened. So anyway, more to come on them. Will I guess be another 3 months before we see how the holiday did, but that's not a great sign more broadly for pennies or the moderate department store space. The last thing I'll mention very quickly, while these are not earnings, several retailers did flash some sales performance numbers. Costco, which releases their sales every month, so they're a little bit unusual, they were up 8.5% comp.
Amazing.
Third biggest retailer in North America. They obviously are gaining significant market share. American Eagle, shout out to Greg Brommers, who's been on the pod before, their CMO. I saw Craig at an event during NRF where he was quite entertaining, I have to say. They were up high single digits in sales, and they took their guidance up. Five Below, another retailer we've mentioned a few times, just lighting it up. Holiday comps rose 14.5%. So I suspect, as we have been talking about for a while now, when these numbers come in, we're really going to see the haves and have-nots, because we've got some very big retailers putting up numbers way above average. I absolutely suspect Amazon and Walmart will be significantly above the average. So anyway, clearly some people didn't find a lump of coal in their stocking, but I suspect we will see some others will.
On my retail tour in New York was the new American Eagle flagship store on Broadway, just down from the Target store. What a beautiful store! So if you're in New York, be sure and go in that store. And I love their use of RFID. They've got you can tap any item and you have a nice display screen. So not only is it a beautiful store that reflects their performance and that they're really one of the leading retailers in America, but also just all comes together quite well with their various brands. So be sure and stop in if you are in the neighborhood. You and I have been talking about GLP-1s for quite a while, and one of the things we thought would be a big unlock was when it stopped being an injection in the leg and started going to be a pill form. And of course, we're talking about it. We don't follow that sector, but it has incredible implications on the retail industry. We think apparel, for example. So what news? There's some news on these drugs from Amazon, yeah?
Yeah, well, it was a couple weeks ago. I think now that Wegovy started to be available in pill form, and what we're seeing now, which I think is interesting, both from a retailer perspective as well as certain sectors of retail, is that folks like Amazon, folks like Costco, are starting to offer the pill form in addition to the injectable forms in many cases. And Amazon Pharmacy announced that they are selling the Wegovy prescriptions for just $25 a month. That's the insurance price. So lots of people may not be able to get that price, but $149 without insurance, which is not nothing, but compared to some of the prices that we were seeing when these drugs first came on the market, I think that is going to greatly expand the market. So, we've talked about the impact on the apparel market. There's been some research that also shows that when people lose a significant amount of weight, I guess this, as soon as I heard this, I was like, well, that kind of makes sense. They may feel more self-confident. So they may lead to spending on handbags and jewelry and other kind of fashion items. So I think the ripple effect, even though I haven't seen great data on this, but I think the ripple effect on certain sectors is quite significant. So to the extent that the prices continue to come down, which they seem to be, to the extent that we've got pill forms, we may see even more dramatic effects on certain aspects of the apparel and other related items.
All right, well, that's a wrap on the news. We'll be back after our interview with Jessica Schinazi, CEO of Away Luggage, with things that we're finding remarkable this week and looking at around the corner. But for now, let's get to our interview with Jessica.
Well, Jess, welcome to the Remarkable Retail Podcast here in the Narvar Remote Podcast Studio at NRF. How are you today?
I'm doing great. It's so good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, we're exciting to talk to you. Normally, we just like to kick things off by learning a little bit about our guest and their brand. So maybe you could just tell us a little bit about who you are, your personal, professional journey, and then what you're doing at Away.
Would love to. I joined the brand a year ago, and we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary in 2026.
Amazing.
For the last 15 years, though, I've been an operator in consumer goods and retail. I've worked for amazing brands, always at an inflection point when I've joined those brands. So I've worked in luxury for brands like Richemont and LVMH. I've worked for Amazon, where I was launching and accelerating the beauty industry for them. And then most recently, I spent a couple of years leading the Dyson business in appliances based in Chicago. Yeah, it's been great. It's been fantastic to be able to be at the intersection of innovation and brand building and growth for all of those great brands.
Well, so what should our audience know about Away? I'm sure many people would know the brand. I've owned some Away luggage for quite a few years now, and I notice on the planes it seems like there's pretty good market share. But just for people that may not know about the brand or maybe not know some of the fun facts and figures, what should they know?
Absolutely. 10 years ago, we came to market with one perfect luggage, a single carry-on made of PC, polycarbonate, that truly modernized the way that people not only purchase luggage, but also travel with luggage. Before Away, if you think about your luggage buying experience, it was very much nondescript, non-emotional. It was buying a utility product, perhaps going to the basement of a department store and buying something black, generally in soft fabric as well. And that product might live through a few trips, might not live through a few trips. We thought that we could do much, much better. And that travel is such an emotional experience that the item that you carry with you needs to be a reflection not only of your style, of the way that you travel, but we also want it, of course, to be extremely high quality, lots of craftsmanship. And so we bundled all of those things together in that single perfect SKU. Great experience buying it online on our own website. A million colors, basically, to truly reflect the way that you have to travel. And incredible quality standards backed by our warranty policy. So a ton of customers that I still meet today, they bought their first Away 10 years ago, and it's still their workhorse. It's working so well. It's been all over the world for them. And we've been lucky to grow since then, and we just closed a great year. So things are going well.
And you've got how many stores now?
We have 17 stores overall, 15 in the US, 1 in Canada, 1 in the UK. We also operate a large e-commerce website that's very original to our brand from the very, very early days. And last year, we expanded distribution. We opened Amazon, we opened Nordstrom, we reinforced our partnership with Dick's Sporting Goods, and we have a couple more opening imminently as well.
Nice.
Well, it's a great segue into the business model discussion, right? We've seen many brands, digitally native brands, that started as pure, we call them wobbly unicorns,
yes.
right? They were going to take over the world. This was the new way to do business. And then, as our friend Simeon Siegel would say, you discovered you had to pay somebody else to get not just the wholesale rates. So how do you think of the evolution, even back to Dyson, right? Now Dyson has so many stores, they got a wholesale brand, they have direct, they have a number of these things. How do you think of the evolution of the business model and the space?
I think that in the last 2 decades, consumer brands generally, we've seen the pendulum move from one way to the other in distribution. You've had the era of distribution through wholesale partners to get reach, to get awareness, to get the product in the hands of as many people as possible. And then there was a movement, very clearly I remember in the 2010s, where it went the other way around, right? It was all about maintaining your own website, your flagships, getting out of wholesale and building those DTC, sometimes DTC only brands, right? I think we're entering a new moment in which I like to call it DTC smart. It's what I love about DTC, which is the ability to talk to your own customers, the ability to build loyalty, to build direct relationships and conversations, but amplified and accelerated by new business models that are emerging that some wholesale and retail partners are helping to facilitate for you, right? And so the wholesale landscape itself has changed so much in the last 10, 20 years that doing wholesale now is actually quite different than doing wholesale even 20 years ago. And that has been what has driven our omnichannel distribution expansion. We were a website, a network of strong retail stores, and when we've made the decision to expand to wholesale partners, it's been because we want to accelerate the growth. We want to go meet the customers where they are, and we're able to do that with a whole new set of tools that are now available at wholesale that potentially we didn't have before. And we're doing that built on 10 years of building the loyalty and the direct relationships again with all of our customers. And at Dyson, it was a very similar story. Very, very strong product. I think that's the anchor of everything. And very strategic distribution, going first into appliances and electronics stores. And then as the brand launched more beauty products, opening beauty specialty retail, which is a very different style of store, department stores, launching on Amazon again as pure play and understanding the nuances of that. So
it's a fascinating evolution.
Really
like if you cast your mind back to when you were running these businesses and you were to kind of sit back and think, is this where you thought it would go? Did you think there was a future for brands without wholesale? Did you, were you bought into that? Or are you saying, I'm not sure if this is going to work, but I'm going to go with it for now? Or how were you thinking about that at the time?
It's a great question. The trend was super strong, and the early signals were very, very promising and quite addictive as well. The ability, again, to remove some of the steps along the way and accelerate how fast you can engage with your customer. You can speak to them so directly and so fast and get immediate feedback. That was amazing. What we've seen is that we've been able to build really, really large e-commerce only businesses, and then you start seeing that it's plateauing a little bit, and not for the sake of the customers is not excited by the proposition anymore, but simply because you need to go get the new customer where they are in other places.
That's the thing I wanted to talk about and get back to Away pretty quickly here, but just in general in terms of the evolution of the model, when I worked with some of the digitally native vertical brands early on, I remember one founder where I said, well, there's going to be a point at which, like right now you're getting all the raving fans, kind of, the 1,000 true fan folks that love you, fit your business model.
Yes.
They're on social media, you have low cost of customer acquisition. There's a point at which, and they very clearly were going after a Nordstrom type customer where you're going to have to go compete to steal customers away from Nordstrom, and Nordstrom's pretty good.
They're great at keeping their customers. Yes.
So and then obviously there was the escalation in cost of customer acquisition and all that stuff. Different episode probably, but it has been interesting how it shifted. I'd like to talk a little bit more about your distribution strategy and how you think about it. But maybe before we get there, you mentioned you've been there about a year. Was there anything that surprised you? Just from the external perspective, and I'm sure you had lots of conversations before you took the gig, but was there anything that surprised you getting there?
On the customer side of things, talking to customers who've had the same carry-on for the last 10 years, that carry-on has been on thousands of trips. And you see the product, you see their luggage, and it carries the memories of all of those travels, and it's still such a good product 10 years later. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is surprising in the best possible way. And it's incredible to me, jumping into this role, the emotional connection that the brand has been able to tie
for
to
such
those
a utilitarian product at its very
right.
foundation, right?
For luggage. And you tell someone, you right away, it is that love brand. It is the immediate reaction. I love my carry-on. I love my weekender. This for something that is pretty utilitarian, to your point. I think that that's exceptional. I think it's gold. I think that not a lot of consumer brands can say that, and that's been amazing.
We'll be right back with Jess from Away Luggage right after these messages. Promotional support for the show comes from Find Mine. In the time it takes to listen to this ad, your team could have leveled up their productivity by 90% and set up your brand for increased sales. Find Mine's AI tools let you run operations on thousands of products right now. Get self-service AI to support product tagging for better success with AI agents, dynamic programmatic ads for Meta, visually similar product recs, complete the look styling, trend, and campaign curations. Find Mine's innovative enterprise platform currently generates breakthrough customer experiences for top brands like Lululemon and Ann Taylor. See what Find Mine can do for you and join the waitlist at findmine.com/remarkable retail. If the world has changed so very, very much, why have so many organizations changed so little? As the pace of disruption accelerates, leaders need the courage and the insight to aim higher in the value they deliver, move faster than they ever have before, and take the bold action to leap ahead of the competition. With Leaders Leap, Transforming Your Company at the Speed of Disruption, Steve's latest breakthrough bestseller, you'll discover why so many companies fall into the trap of the timid transformation. More than anything, you'll learn about the essential mind leaps leaders need to make to win the future. Leaders Leap is available just about everywhere books are sold, as well as on Audible and as an ebook on Kindle for just $9.99.
I want to add a second layer of surprise, which is jumping into a role in consumer and retail in 2025 is not for the faint of heart. There has been so much last year that has happened that has forced all of myself, but my executive team as well, to truly show resilience, to truly show that you have to work both on strategy, operations, and culture at the same time to continue to thrive in this environment that is so highly competitive, where everyone is so much demanding of customers' attention all the time. That is a profound reminder of the work that we need to do and redo at the beginning of every single day.
So I want to talk, we obviously talked a little bit already about the wholesale versus direct, but I want to pick up on what you were what I think I understand you were saying about the brand. You know, I often say, which I did not come up with, that people often buy the story before they buy the product. And so if the story is about this, my memories of great travel and all these kinds of things. So I wonder how you think about, I mean, obviously wholesale can get you a lot of reach, get you awareness in a way that maybe you can't, it's not smart to afford to do it through your own direct strategies. But I would imagine, I think that, the storytelling opportunities might be different in a Nordstrom than they are on an Amazon.
Yeah.
And, what you're able to do, we were just talking off mic about your new North Park store, which is not far from me, which is fantastic. But, that really allows you not only to show the breadth of your product, but to create the environment.
Tell the story.
They're your sales associates and all that kind of stuff. So how do you make the trade-offs, I guess, between what you're trying to do with the brand longer term while, I don't want to say turning over the brand to another partner, but there are trade-offs, right?
Absolutely. And there are trade-offs, but they're also so complementary, because storytelling is going to bring the emotion. It's going to bring that beautiful brand love, beautiful campaign, the idea of travel being evocative and emotional and transformative, and all of those beautiful things that we tie travel to. But in the case of luggage specifically, if the product itself is not exceptional, that's not going to get you very far.
Sure.
If after your first trip, your wheels stop rolling, your zippers are not closing smoothly, and the product is not gliding, you're not only going to not believe in the proposition anymore, you're going to actually lose trust in the brand that sold you this beautiful dream. And the strength of Away is that we truly sit at the heart of that framework that we use a lot of a brain, beauty, and brawn. And it's the beautiful product that's so thoughtfully designed and that's incredibly well made and resistant over time. And so when we talk about trade-offs and tying that back to distribution, it's about what piece of that framework we're going to over-index on. And in the stores, you're right, we can package the storytelling with our own sales associates telling that story so beautifully in a way that's going to connect to your way of traveling that might be different than yours. We're not going to talk the same way to someone who's traveling by plane, by train, for business, for pleasure, going on their honeymoon or traveling with all of their kids. And we now have expanded our assortment, and so we're really able to tailor our propositions of what we want you to consider potentially purchasing based on that. On an Amazon, it's all about the information and the reviews, and it's the trust that builds through not the sales associates, but actually the third parties, the thousands, the tens of thousands of other customers who've bought the products and are going to have that very unfiltered view on it.
Right.
At Nordstrom, we are in 60 locations. I've mentioned we have 15 stores in the US. This is a unique opportunity for us to be in physical locations for customers to come, to touch the product, to look at the different sizes, to see how beautifully it glides in cities where maybe we don't have a store yet.
Sure.
Right? So it's all about finding the incremental value unlock of those distributors, of those retail partners, and what is it that we want to truly use them for in a way that's going to be very, I think, mutually beneficial. And you've talked about the loyalty of Nordstrom, which is so impressive and such a great testament to what that retailer has built. And that's so true as well. Customers love shopping in places that they know, that they love, where they get rewarded, where they have history and legacy, where they are comfortable. And we see that that's working really, really well. And so when we engage with a Nordstrom, we really, again, play at moments where we know that Nordstrom is winning. When they're doing their big annual events, where they're doing their beautiful holiday propositions. And so it's and that's what's fun, I think, today in retail when you have an omni distribution, is you get to play with all of those levers.
Yeah.
Is it storytelling? Is it assortment? Is it more holiday? And so on and so forth.
It's a lot of levers to pull for your team.
Yes.
I want to talk about the other side of driving sales, the marketing piece. A very crowded category in one way. You got cheap and cheerful at one end, all the way to luxe at the other end. What's changed?
And a few companies that have very obviously knocked you off, I would say, right?
We were in a session this morning, and it's not unusual at this show. You can't spell retail without talking about AI, and
Sure.
we're talking about the things you're going to have to do now to get agency and authority. How do you think about all this and interacting with the platforms, and now you got buy buttons and ChatGPT? I mean, distribution aside, how are you dealing with that, and how are you guys thinking about that?
I was in a strategic planning session about a month and a half ago with my executive team, and the big thought-provoking question to start the day is, in 26, we're going to compete with companies that are starting today. And those companies, they're going to start with an ecosystem of tools and products that did not exist at all 10 years ago. Not even the precipice of those existed, right? Like, it just did not exist at all. So when you're thinking AI first, and those companies that are getting created are thinking AI first because that's the only thing that they know, how do you compete in that? And it's so interesting because it's forcing us to do two things. One is, what do we need to transform internally? What do we need to pivot that was perhaps not super AI focused, or data that was too long for us to get it, too manual, etc., versus data that now we can get incredibly fast. And so transforming those internal processes, there's a huge piece of internal change management that's required. The other thing is, what are the new things, net new things that we need to now start doing? And when we talk about agentic commerce, for example, that's one of them. When we talk about rebuilding the practice that we are really, really good at SEO, and what does that look like in GEO and that landscape? What are the talents that we need? How do those people work with all of the other processes? How do you allocate your budgets in a world where now you have to do all of that at the same time?
It's fascinating because listening to you, if I played the script in our interviews 5 years ago or longer, you would have the digitally native brand saying the exact same thing. And
Absolutely.
I think people underestimate the agility now of
Yes.
traditional brands to say, listen, you might think that's an advantage. You know, the digital native brands, hey, we're going to move faster, we're going to be slicker, we got younger people, we know the tech, these guys, we're going to leave them
Yes.
behind. You're kind of describing the same thing,
Yes.
but I think people underestimate the core agility of brands like you to kind of catch up real quick.
And that's what's giving me a lot of excitement and hope, is that to some extent we've done this before. 10 years ago, we pioneered that DTC first way of purchasing a great premium product online. We were part of the original cohort of brand who started playing on social and that brand POV and the early days even of social commerce within that. We were the early brands who got very, very strong understanding of customer acquisition on pure play channels. It's that same mindset again, applied to a new ecosystem that's now more AI driven. And so this is why it's exciting, it's ambitious, but we've pioneered before, and
we've done it before, we can do it again.
That's the beauty of it. We don't have to follow anyone else, we get to do it again.
No. Wow, so exciting. So what's next? Any news you want to break about? But no, I imagine some more stores, other things, product expansions perhaps? Yeah, like what should we be looking for across the next year or two?
25 was such an incredible anchor year for us in truly engaging in that omnichannel distribution. We've opened hundreds of new POS at this point, and that work is going to continue in 2026. More accounts, more doors in those accounts, going to meet the customers even more where they are. And where they are not only here in the US, but also deepening our international distribution. That's one part of it. The other part of it in 26, you're going to see from Away a lot of really exciting product innovation that's coming. Product innovation in the features and functionalities that we're bringing to market, the formats that we're bringing to market, with behind the understanding that, again, people travel differently than 10 years ago.
And the airlines treat luggage differently when you bring it on board than they did.
As well. And keeping track with what's happening there, it's a whole other thing as well. So product innovation remains our number one priority. That's how we came to market. That's what we want to still be known for, with always that huge piece around the quality of the product and our testing standards, etc. And then the third piece in 26 that you'll see from us is very much brand partnerships and continuing to work with tapping into the power of community and huge communities. We've announced a few really notable partnerships last year, including with the WNBA sponsoring the New York Liberties, being in partnerships with Sabrina Ionescu. We're going to continue that partnership with products coming this year made for that collaboration, and more brands, more excitement, more fun to continue bringing energy and buzz into the brand story.
You're well known in the industry as a fantastic leader, so we can't miss the opportunity to get some advice for our listeners about core leadership lessons. Like this morning we were talking about how all these companies are saying, you know, we're going to bring in AI and not people, and we were like, well, what are the people thinking then? Right. Why am I coming to work?
Sure.
Like, oh, you're going to get rid of my job in 3 years? Well, that's great.
Let me train that agent.
Yeah, let me make sure they can take my job over and do it anyway. But in this dynamic time, we went through the COVID era and we learned lessons there about agility and resilience.
Yes.
Now, what lessons would you like to impart or advice for fellow leaders about dealing with whatever it is we're dealing with today?
Yeah, I think that COVID, you mentioned it, taught resilience to a lot of teams. And resilience is such a key core leadership feature that day in and day out we continue to engage in. And I think that now in the age of AI, the approach that we've taken at Away has been to look truly at AI as an enabler, as an accelerator of better human-driven work processes, and this is why we've trained 100% of our teams. We don't want anyone to feel on the sidelines. We don't want anyone to see this wave of AI jargon coming in and not knowing what it means for them. I want everyone to understand how AI can impact positively their job by freeing up 20-30% of their time to do more strategy, to do more meaningful work that's going to deliver value in the long term. That's the approach that we have at Away. And so within that, there's an element of continued curiosity that I'm asking from everyone in the teams, the ability to continue to want to learn and to be open-minded myself first about things that I don't really know a lot about. And when you combine, I think, resilience with curiosity, with strategy and culture at the same time, I think that you start building really, really interesting teams, and that's what I value a lot.
I talk to leaders like yourself, and there's a concern about AI replacing, I don't want to get this all about AI, but replacing a tranche of opening positions where you have this, you learn as an intern, a summer intern, this job, but if you wipe out a whole young generation, I think there's a legitimate fear that you're going to wipe out a generation of people who will never get to the manager level because they've been wiped out at the go get the coffee for the meetings level.
And it's all also about not only the what AI could potentially replace in those roles, but there's a piece around the soft skills that you learn as an early career, right?
Sure.
Like the dynamics of an office and working in teams and listening to diverging point of views and arguing and advocating for your case and making your budget and your forecast, et cetera, et cetera. So I agree with you. I have some concern about that. At Away, I don't think that it applies to us, thankfully. When we are recruiting for early careers, which we still are, we are asking for some of those AI skills because now we're thinking about the scope differently of those roles. And so it might not be like for like exactly, but those roles are still there. They still exist. AI is a tool for them. And we are now asking those people to think more strategically about other topics.
Just the last question, I'm kind of lingering on this, but it's similar conversation to in-office, working in an office as a team versus remote. How do you think about that a couple of days in? Like, it's hard to get attachment, it's hard to learn a culture, meet people. Are you a fan of more time together? How do you operationalize that?
I'm a fan of balance. I'm a fan of being together to build connection, to build speed, and also recognizing and honoring the flexibility that we all got used to as well. That also works really, really well.
And you're not, for hiring, you're not constrained by geography. You can hire the best person wherever they are.
We want to hire the best person. We do ask people to be in New York as much as possible because we have physical products, and it's so important, in my opinion, to touch the products, to be there during the product development life cycle, to look at the prototypes, to understand the claims and the value behind all of that. But in good fashion, as a travel company, everyone in our team
encourage a little bit of
travels
travel.
a lot. And for example,
does everybody get a piece of luggage on their desk when they first arrive?
Yes, they do. They get their travel uniform that gets refreshed every couple of years.
Fantastic.
And you can spend the summer also traveling all over the world and working from all over the world Away. And so that's really special as a travel company. We have the moments that we build to be together and what we want out of those moments. And then we have the moments that we build to be more remote. And I expect postcards and pictures from people with their Away luggage.
Excellent. Well, listen, this has been such a treat.
Thank you so much for
listening to
having
your
me.
insights and your
Thank
wisdom,
you.
and thanks so much for joining Steve and I in the Narvar podcasting studio here at the Big Show. I hope you have a great rest of your show.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me again.
Thanks again so much. All right, we are back. Let's get to the remarkable story of the week. Steve, you foreshadowed it in the first part. A little bit more conversation about Saks and maybe about this Baker character who we in Canada call him that effing guy. But you kick us off and talk more about Saks.
Well, I had a couple of other stories I was thinking about for this segment, but as I've been reading some of the material, particularly coming out of the bankruptcy filings, and by the way, I would, for people that want a deeper dive, Women's Wear Daily has been covering this really well as Puck, Lauren Sherman at Puck, and some others. So if you're really interested in it, there's plenty more to get into. I won't get too deep on it, but I guess the thing that continues to strike me about this is just how crazy the merger deal was from the beginning, and some of the complexities that now seem more evident in getting the reorganization plan done. The first thing I'll say is Amazon has really been, I would say, not playing ball here because they made what is a bigger stake than I thought, a $475 million equity stake in Saks Global for the merger back in December 2024. And with the filing, they have complained, basically said that their investment is presumptively worthless Now, they can afford a $475 million write-off, but I imagine they would like to get some or all of that money back.
Well, as you like to say, $1 million here and $1 million there, and eventually it adds up, right?
It's real money, yeah. So anyway, again, I won't go too deep in this, but there are some suggestions that there was misrepresentation, that some of the security they thought, in particular the Saks Fifth Avenue flagship, and they and others are suggesting that maybe things were not presented in a way that was accurate. I guess two comments here. One is, I don't understand, as I said this when the deal was done and we talked about earlier, I don't understand how sophisticated people got close to this deal, much less apparently got misled. So we'll see how this all sorts out. I imagine we will be learning more information. I imagine we'll be seeing lawsuits. So that may complicate getting this reorganization plan done if some big players with deep pockets decide to raise a stink. The other thing that was really shocking to me was how much money vendors are owed. So folks may know that part of what really caused the unraveling here was that Saks Fifth Avenue, when they did the deal, was already behind with a lot of vendors. And then they announced a plan that was going to take them a very long time to get current with the vendors. And that really started this kind of downward spiral of vendors not shipping. But we were led to believe that some of the big conglomerates like Chanel, LVMH, and Kering were being paid. It turns out not so much. Chanel is the biggest creditor here. They are owed over $136 million. There's a whole schedule in Women's Wear Daily if you want to see many, many famous brands and how much they are owed. The unfortunate thing, now Chanel, if they aren't made whole, and of course there's going to be a lot of complexity here with continuing to ship without getting paid. So it's really I believe the technical term is a cluster. But the really sad thing I think here is that many small brands that really rely on department store distribution because they either don't have their own stores or maybe have one or two, and many of these businesses are not especially profitable, and this has been an issue for many, many years. So that's a different podcast. But many of these small brands may not survive if they can't get any cash out of this deal, and it's very likely the case that they will, maybe get 10, 20, 30 cents on the dollar, but it's very unlikely that they will be made whole. But we shall see. But anyway, yeah, it is a mess. Good luck to GVR and the new team to sorting this out. But I think we're going to hear way more about this particular deal than probably we want to in many respects.
I picked up on this when I was at the NRF show. I haven't thought about drone delivery in a long, long time. Walmart announced during the show that they're going to roll out drone delivery to additional 150 stores in the next year. They're doing this with Wing, which is a unit of Alphabet, part of Google. So at the end of the day, by the end of the year, 270 locations nationwide by the end of 2027. And there's actually in your neck of the woods, I don't know, do you ever see these drones, Dallas, Fort Worth, Atlanta regions? Now, I don't know who's a big fan of drone delivery. I guess I get it in these very, very rural areas.
People are a fan of using their cell phones on airplanes or kids on their iPad without headphones. That's the Venn diagram of that is very similar.
I mean, I think the other fans are hunters who have good target practice at these drones, actually. Yeah. Listen, I am no fan of this at all. I do not want thousands of these buzzing little things around my neighborhood, but I get the use case in a broad place like the Patch or somewhere where there's, it's inaccessible and can deliver product to people. But, anyway, I thought it was interesting. I hadn't thought about drone delivery in a long, long time. It was going to be a big thing like 5 years ago and never really went anywhere, thankfully, from my perspective. But anyway, 40 million Walmart shoppers apparently will have access to the service by the end of 27, up from 2 million today. All right, what's on the radar screen coming up for you?
So I went down a little bit of an economics rabbit hole when I was reminded of something called the beverage curve, which is the relationship between job vacancies and unemployment. And I ran into a couple of stories that were suggesting that there could be a shift in the curve. So typically you would think that if there aren't many vacancies, then unemployment is pretty low, and basically vice versa. I think last week we talked about, despite the lack of job growth in the U.S., unemployment has stayed quite low, and that appears to be largely a supply issue because there haven't been a ton of layoffs so far. But anyway, there's some speculation that it won't take much to tip this relationship in a negative way, that if we start to see a significant number of layoffs, that the unemployment rate could accelerate quite quickly, and then that can have a bit of a cascading effect. So I don't completely understand why many economists are worried about this. Economists are often worried about a lot of things like recessions that don't come true. But anyway, there's starting to be a little buzz that maybe we shouldn't be so sanguine about the unemployment rate, that these things can fall apart quite quickly. And there's a couple of historical examples of that, which I won't bore our listeners with, but it is a thing that has happened in the past. And I guess people are starting to see some signs there. But obviously, if the unemployment rate were to start to go up quite a bit, that would have significant effects on the retail and the economy more broadly.
I'm thinking about Kendra Scott and the Kendra Scott brand, picking up from an article in Texas Monthly. By the way, why do I subscribe to Texas Monthly in Toronto? To follow barbecue godfather Daniel Vaughn and the barbecue scene. It's a great article. It's a fascinating look at a retail icon, iconoclast. Now, late last year, she took out her entire senior management team and came back into the business. Fun factoid, we were going to interview the CEO of Kendra Scott just about an hour before he decided to spend more time with his family.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, can't do it. I'm spending more time with my family. Yeah.
Yeah. The news is she's installed a new leadership team for 2026. If you don't know the Kendra Scott brand, 4,200 employees, 95% of women. They're a jewelry brand. They've got a nice, beautiful store that you introduced me to in Dallas, and there's one in Soho that I walked by on the way to Tecovest. 168 stores in total. Tom Nolan was who we were going to interview. He left. A couple other executives left, but now they have announced January 6th. Chris Blakesley, previously at Alo Yoga, was announced as a new CEO. So I'm looking forward to see what happens with that brand. I think they have great potential. She is one to watch and one to admire and fear, or whatever you want to do, depending on what chair you're sitting in. And she just married, or is getting married to Zach Brown. So just a fascinating retail icon. And lots of things, I think, ahead in 2026.
I smell a collab and getting into the apparel business. That would be my prediction.
Well, let's leave it there, because that's a great prediction, thinking about who they just put in the CEO role. Anyway, that's a wrap on this episode. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back next week with more great content from the NRF show and observations on news of the week and what we're looking at in the retail industry looking ahead.
Thanks for tuning in. To help more retail leaders discover the industry's leading podcast, please drop us that 5-star rating and review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you enjoy your pods. And for more on my strategic advisory services, keynote speaking, best-selling books, and even more retail industry insights, go to StephenPDennis.com.
If you are a brand or service provider looking to take your influence to the next level, reach out to us for sponsorship, advertising, or event partnerships. And if you want to learn more about my own keynote speaking and advisory practice, reach out to me via LinkedIn.